All right, ladies and gentlemen, folks, welcome to the first ever virtual adult night. We're here. We did it. You've made it to Adult Night Game Night. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hello, my name is Chris. I am curator of the SCCU Daily Planet Theater at the wonderful and always exciting North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in beautiful downtown Raleigh. Of course, I'm not actually at the Museum of Natural Sciences right now. That's right. Our whole team, the whole Adult Night crew, is scattered all over the triangle. But you know what? The Adult Night folks and the people that come to our 21 and up after hours parties every quarter, y'all are the best. We couldn't leave you out when we were doing virtual programming and setting up the lineup for the season. So, you know what? Here we are. And tonight, guess what? We've got an amazing program for you. I am astounded at the level of talent and skill and insight and expertise and experience that we have for you tonight. So tonight we've got 4 big segments set up for you. So let me walk you through a little bit of how the show is going to run tonight. First up, we'll meet Josh Markowitz. He's a lead programmer at Epic Games. We'll have a conversation with him. Following that, we'll be talking to board game designer and award-winning board game designer, I should say, Elizabeth Hargrave. You might know the board game Wingspan that she designed. After that, we'll be testing out making our own video game music using a synthesizer app. Moderators, my helpers, I've got there in the chat. If you want to go ahead and drop the link to the Audio Kit Synth 1 app. That way, folks, if you don't already have it downloaded to your iOS device, you can do that. And then when we get to electronic music signature, you can go step by step, dial by dial, tap by tap with us to make your own video game sounds and your own video game music. And then we're going to round out the night with an event that is one of our most popular things at every adult night, trivia. Yep, we're going to play trivia. We'll use a series of questions. You can test your knowledge against everybody else in the show. Sound good? I hope so. As we go through the program with each of our guest speakers, as we go through the interviews and all, feel free to use the chat box that you have right there in Zoom. Use the chat and post questions, post comments. We'll be pulling from those to give our guest speakers your questions. So we're going to have one big conversation tonight all around games. Hope you're excited. So you will see people in the chat, their names, they've got their name and then it says museum staff. That's because they are museum staff. They're there to help you if anything goes wrong and to help moderate. Which is to say that this is the internet. Everybody here got in for free. So I want to put a little special disclaimer, a special note out there to say, please be civil to one another. Please be respectful to everybody else that's in the program, to our guest speakers, and to everyone who's logged in here. We wanted to make this a space where everybody could gather together at once, just like if we were all hanging out in the museum together, but we all also have to be adults about it. So do that. If you don't do that, the moderators will kick you out. Easy as that. But we want you to stay here. Special thanks go to Citrix for sponsoring tonight's event. Many thanks to them for joining us at the museum and in this program. Proceeds from this event benefit the Friends of the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. And a very special thanks to the members of the museum. In particular, our Catalyst members. Shout out to Catalyst. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the Adult Night series in particular. And glad that you could join us. Did I cover everything? I think so. I'm going to check the chat real quick just to make sure. It looks like I did. So, are you ready to get the party started? Are you ready to get Adult Night Game Night rocking and rolling? Let's do it. I want to introduce everyone to our first guest for tonight. Our first guest is Josh Markowitz. If you've heard of the games Unreal Tournament, Paragon, Gears of War, or maybe, you know, the one that's kind of popular right now, Fortnite, then you should know Josh Markowitz. Josh is a lead programmer at Epic Games and Epic Online Services. He's been in the gaming industry for something like 13 years with Epic and 19 years doing game development. Josh, welcome to Game Night.
Thanks. I appreciate being able to be here and talk about video games. This seems like a really cool format. Thank you.
So give us the 30-second story, or maybe like the 60-second story of how you got into games in the first place.
Sure. Might be a little dating myself, but my first computer was a PC Junior. There was a little game from Sierra called King's Quest. Learned to type this way. Enjoyed all the Sierra games. I told my mom and dad, like, this is what I want to do. I think their 80s view of programmers at the time was, you know, pocket protectors and white, you know, short sleeve tie shirts. But this is kind of what I wanted to do. I got into college, focused on computer science, started to do a little bit of art, and as well, got into flight simulators after college, which was kind of graphics heavy and graphics based. Found out that Salt Lake City had quite a burgeoning game development community. Got in my first game job, I worked for Namco, which does Pac-Man. Worked there for a couple of years, and then found my way over here to Raleigh, and I've been here ever since. So just glad to be doing what I've always kind of wanted to do. It was either this or movie special effects, and I'll take this just as much as that. So
video games or movie special effects. So you've been in the industry for a long time then. What would you say have been some of the biggest changes
in the industry? Oh, so I would say that, you know, obviously in the late 90s, things like 3D graphics kind of came. That's kind of what almost put out of business the company I worked for at first. Like, they were charging millions of dollars for these really high-end systems to the government for flight simulators. And then all of a sudden everyone could buy off the shelf a piece of hardware and slap it into their own computer and get 3D. And I think that revolutionized the game industry, because you went from, you know, 2D games, like obviously even your intro here was chiptunes and 8-bit graphics, right? And all of a sudden now everything's just more real. 1998, Unreal came out just to show how, you know, 3D could be advanced. And, you know, over the years, you know, it was the single player game, and everyone wanted to, you know, you'd buy something at a GameStop or something, and you'd play it. And then, you know, then of course online became a thing, and people started having very basic online play. And then of course, now we're kind of in this world of games as a service where, you know, maybe we offer the game for free, and we fund it based on, you know, buying skins and emotes and sprays and things like that. So I think it's definitely evolved. I think consumer expectations has also changed a lot. You know, games used to be, or still are to a certain extent, $60 a pop. And then people are like, well, what am I getting for my money? And now, you know, there's been kind of a race to the bottom where, you know, iPad and iPhone games are 99 cents, or maybe they're ad supported. And, you know, so I think expectations have certainly changed in many dimensions over the years.
Sounds like exciting stuff. So tell me, I mean, what's it like to work for Epic Games, right? They're one of the titans of the industry right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, I wouldn't say I play games all day, you know? So when I got here in 2007, and Epic was about 70 people. They had just finished Gears of War 1, was working on Unreal Tournament 3. And I have to say, you know, I'd heard of the company. You know, back then, you know, you were still thinking of Call of Duties and games like that. And Epic had made a kind of niche market in the PC industry with Unreal Tournament, and Gears of War kind of put them on the map, I think, console-wise. And ever since, we've just been elevating our graphics and technology and our online technology and our cross-platform technology ever since. So I was really humbled when I got there, because, you know, there were some really smart people doing really cool things, and I'd never really worked on an engine before. Like, everywhere I'd worked before was, you know, the bottom line was just shipping a game, and we have to, as a company, we support hundreds of other companies that use our technology. So, you know, writing code or doing whatever you do, you have to kind of keep in mind, like, is this the most generic thing you can implement, or is it very specific to what we're trying to do? And so, you know, and also the robustness. I think you have to really think about, you know, will people who aren't familiar with the system, or who can't walk down the hallway to talk to you, will they understand what you've done, and will it work in their cases? Because, you know, Unreal Engine powers real-time strategy games. It powers first-person shooters. It powers all kinds of like mobile games. So there's all kinds of different walks of life and different requirements, from the very small, nimble games to the very huge, cinematic AAA titles that you see out there.
So you just mentioned it. Tell us what the Unreal Engine is. Those folks who maybe aren't into the video game world so much.
Sure. So back in the day, I guess everyone kind of maybe worked out of their garage and they worked on their own systems, and you'd have to start from the ground up, right? You have to care about drawing graphics and playing sounds and handling input, and all of that just is fundamental to, getting to where you want to be for like what kind of game do you want to make. So nobody really wants to write a math library, like doing multiplication and vectors and all kinds of collision detection. So we provide the Unreal Engine, which is a cross-platform technology that basically just kind of boosts you up to focusing on the game itself. Obviously, there can be a steep learning curve to use these features, but for the most part, if you don't have to worry about whether your math is good or whether or not your graphics drawing is fast, you can trust in the system itself. And then if you get it working on your PC, then it will also just quickly port over to the Xbox or on the PlayStation or on the iPhone or on the Android device. And so it really kind of, I guess, fast forwards your development to focusing on the game content and less on, will this run in a fast way on all these different devices.
So tell us a little bit about what your role is specifically at Epic. What are you doing day to day?
Okay. So I think everyone, gets really excited about computer graphics. I mean, it's the most visual thing. So when I first got there, I was kind of a, graphics guy doing graphics things, drawing pixels on the screen. But I eventually started helping out with gameplay. So I did a lot for Unreal Tournament 3. I did a lot of gameplay work, making sure the vehicles could fly and the weapons could shoot, and that, AI could do that. For a while during Gears of War 2 and Gears 3, I continued to work on, gameplay features, implementing weapons and vehicles and gameplay mechanics. But then just kind of serendipitously, we kind of needed to have some online help. And it was like, can you help over here? We don't have enough people working on this. So back in 2009 or so, I started working on online features. And that's really like, it's underappreciated, I think, to a certain extent. It's kind of what keep people, connected to each other, right? And obviously nowadays things are much more connected as games progress. And so the online realm is, there's a social component, like where's your friends list, or how do you send invites to a friend? How do you let them know that you're even online? And then once they've noticed you, how do we get you connected together, right? So, we have our servers, and we want to be able to match make you. So, making sure the game is fair, making sure that you can find the game, like, there's multiple playlists. For example, you might have capture the flag, or you might have deathmatch, or maybe you have, creative mode like in Fortnite. And so being able to find the server that you want to go to and get them connected. And then there's just stability. The internet's a real fickle place. So, your cat could eat your Ethernet cable and disconnect you from the internet, or maybe you're playing on your mobile phone and you go through a tunnel, and for 3 seconds you lose your connection to the cellular tower network. So, there's a lot of work there just going on, being resilient and recovering from, the craziness of the internet and keeping people happy playing the games. So.
Yeah, the internet is such a fast moving place. I mean, like the Fortnite updates, daily with new stuff? Weekly?
So Fortnite, I mean, I think our cadence to this day still continues to be about every 2 weeks. We want to kind of keep people interested in the game. I'm pretty amazed at the content there. Obviously, we have dozens, if not hundreds, of people now working just on, character content, level content, new map content, thinking of new ways to, what kind of emotes or quests or storylines to kind of tell in this overarching thing. So, there's just a lot of people working together on these 2-week cycles, and it takes a lot of help from production. A lot of people with, really good at, herding cats, so to speak, right? What can we do in those 2 weeks? What's too much? What's not enough? What has to ship? And then of course, coordinating its release. We have to have it tested, make sure it's stable. We have to find, like, now that, Fortnite's such an international game, finding the time to, do that deployment, like, which is to say, kind of take the game down for a brief moment and update everything for you. We usually do it in the dead of night, Eastern Standard Time, but with the popularity, like Japan might be playing at that time, or you got somebody over in the Philippines, or maybe in China or Russia. And so there's never a good time anymore. So it's really about getting that right so that we have the smallest impact on our gamers as possible while trying to roll out new content.
And I'll remind everybody, if you've got questions that you want to ask Josh, pop those into the chat. As we see them come through, we'll grab them and relay them to Josh.
Mm-hmm.
So Josh, you've got your name on a number of different games now, and a number of like really successful games like Gears of War and Fortnite. But what are the games, or maybe game elements, parts of the games where you see that thing that you did perhaps?
Yeah.
Maybe what you're most proud of.
Yeah. So, like I said, I started out in gameplay, and so I left my mark in a few places with Unreal Tournament and Gears of War. In Gears of War 3, was this about this locust infection, and they would kind of come up, these stalks would sprout out of the ground, and these little pods would spit out the bad guys as you were fighting. And so I worked on that. So, I didn't make it look as gooey and gross as it was, but, it was my job to, kind of procedurally animate the pulsing of these pods, and they'd kind of like pop up out of the ground, just kind of go bleh, and like just drop out a guy that you would fight. So that was some very visible stuff. Gears 2, I worked on this tank. So at first it was literally just a tank, and it behaved under physics exactly how you would think of the treads and stuff, but they weren't finding it very fun. So I made it kind of a hybrid between like a dune buggy at high speed and a tank at low speed. So you could kind of like do whippets and, rooster tails and kind of spin it out. And it was only for one level. Like it was, the tank was not really featured in the game other than this, kind of one palette cleanser, as we call it, to kind of mix up the gameplay. I really liked working on that. It was fun, but then you get into the minutia. Somebody comes into the room, is like, hey, it really should honk. Like if you push this button, I want it to, honk, or, we have to make the light come on. There was a certain cinematic element where you fall into a cave and it's really dark, and I needed to kind of like make the light kind of flicker off, because it's a scary part of the game. And then later you fix it so the light has to flicker back on. So like, being part of that, there's two levels, I think. One is this abstract concept, which is, the game, it feels fun when it feels fun. It's not really black and white. It's like, is the reload time too quick or too slow? Does the animation look right and feel right? And I guess I don't do as well with these abstract kind of subjective concepts, like, because you could always make it a little bit better. The online world, I feel, is a little bit more black and white, where like you're either connected or you're not connected. And of course, I guess there's a gray area where, like, again, you're trying to recover from like being in that tunnel or something like that. But there's just a lot of challenges there. And, working on Fortnite Save the World is the paid portion of the game. There's a lot of stuff that, that was the early part. We worked quite several years on this aspect of the game. And so I participated in the way you party up and you socially connect your friends together and invite people. And then, voice chat was something that I had started so that you could, talk to your friends. And so there's certainly an air of satisfaction for being able to kind of solve these complex problems, even if they're not kind of like, I think people take them for granted to a certain extent, right? Like if you have voice chat, people are just happy. If you don't, then they're just irate. So
right.
There's a lot of work that goes into just table stakes, right? Making sure the game just does what's expected. And then, it's just underappreciated, I think, to a certain extent, or just people don't realize what goes on to making a game stable like that.
Love it. All right. Questions have rolled in. Bessie's asking, what inspired you, I guess, Epic, to make games like Fortnite free?
I think that's an interesting question. It's a tough one. Like, around 2013, Epic decided, like, maybe we would be our own publisher, right? We had an alliance with Microsoft. We were kind of one of their first party developers, and Gears of War was exclusive to Xbox. But we thought that, the cost of AAA development just continued to grow, and the expectations of consumers continued to grow, right? You found yourself spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars between advertising and making the game itself, and what consumers, demanded of the product got more and more. Like, it just was like, hey, that last game had it, you need to have it too. And so I think we decided back then, like, what would it mean to be as a service? And like, I know this is it's industry kind of parlance for, just making a game once and investing all your time into this thing for years and years and just continually updating it. So, it's tough, I think, because you're literally offering a game for free. Like you're spending years of time and investing in this thing. You ship it out there. No one has to buy anything if you want. And then I think there's two different sides of that. There's games that may kind of prey on psychological, vulnerabilities in people, like this compulsion to buy or this gambling aspect. And then there's the other side, which I think, like to pay to win, for example. Like this shotgun, if you spend $10, this will give you an edge against other people. And, Epic is definitely on the other side of that, which is just, selling character skins and emotes, which really have no bearing on the game, but they just give you a chance to kind of peacock and show off what, your personality is. And, they talk about whales, these people that basically support the community. They're the ones that spend the most money. But I think if you make a fun game I think we're just surprised as well that people would like to dance in the game or want to wear these kooky skins in Fortnite. And so, as a service, it's free, it's a risk. There's lots of games that try and fail. They don't get that critical mass. And I guess we were just fortunate that, it became popular. You had basketball players talking about it and movies talking about it. And it's actually been pretty exciting to see, things show up in Wreck-It Ralph or on the basketball court, for example.
Nice. Marshall is asking, what advice do you have for people that are interested in getting into the video game industry?
I think, so when I got in the 90s, like the game industry was still, I felt was pretty behind a closed door. I was too, people didn't come on campus to interview. And the idea of sending out my resume just made me really nervous. Like, who am I, this college kid? They don't want me. Nowadays, there's a lot of game programs and all these colleges are trying to kind of capitalize on, what's popular and make these programs. So I'm a little jealous that I seem to have more structure, but, not college isn't necessarily for everybody. And it certainly shows in the game industry. There's plenty of successful people that don't, have that formal education. It just takes passion and desire. There's plenty of games out there that allow you to modify their content. They might have a game editor. They might have some sort of plugin, thing where it's like, hey, if you just write this code or just mess around, like Fortnite, for example, has creative mode. All the tools are inside the game. Some companies let you just edit maps. And so I think you find I've met quite a few people over the course of time where you just were passionate enough and you just downloaded a game and you just made your own content. And then you create your own portfolio of sorts and just say, look, this is this map I made, or I extended your game to include this kind of, you didn't have capture the flag, so I wrote capture the flag for it. There's a lot of people that do it for other reasons too, like taking some game and then just reskinning it. Like, hey, I made a Star Wars version of this. Of course, there's legal licensing issues with some of that stuff, but people are just so passionate about Mario or Zelda or Star Wars or whatever it happens to be that they'll just go and make their own content. And I think that just draws the attention of people. Like, what effort have you put in to show us your passion getting into the industry?
You brought up a really good point there about, this need to go to college, get into one of these gaming or computer science programs in order to do this, and that there are plenty of successful people who don't necessarily take that maybe linear or more linear path. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of questions related to that. Elizabeth Hargrave, that's Elizabeth who's coming up next. As more women have gotten involved in making video games, do you think it's changing the content or how they're getting made? Thinking about demographics of people who, haven't historically had access to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a touchy subject, I think. I think a lot of people mean well, right? For years now, people have been trying to introduce new content that, tries to represent a broader range of the community, whether, different cultural groups, different racial groups, different, whatever kind of things. And I've certainly, when I got to college, my first year of school in engineering, there were plenty of women there. But then as I got to my senior year, they kind of disappeared, and it was a little disheartening. To this day, I think, Epic still has, several handful of female programmers, for example. But I think it's important, like you see a lot of really good content creators from Naughty Dog and 343 Studios, who does Halo and stuff, where there are these women in games. The Assassin's Creed series was created, and produced by, some really strong female creative folks. And so I think that's great. I think people just, have to worry about where is the intent coming from. Like, don't try to read between the lines and find more than what's what's being intended there, other than we're trying to create cultural diversity. We're trying to create, in our content. And I hope that will bring more people interested into games. I think movies, for example, movies have been around for 100 years or more now, and video games are still on that scale are much, much smaller in its infancy. So I hope that people will continue to see it as an art form, and it'll mature, and people will maybe it'll become someday maybe it'll be just the interactive metaverse that everyone talks about.
So I'm going to hit up Rachel's question next. Rachel, future Epic Games developer, wants to know, says they're about to start taking classes for software development. Is that better than a computer science degree?
I mean, I think so. The game industry has room for lots of people, right? We have numerous full staff, musicians. We have in the artistic field, we got, character artists, we got environment artists, we got model, like rigging people. They kind of do animation and set animators. We have concept artists who not that to trivialize that, so they're more traditional art. They're just drawing pictures all day long to show, what does this game turn into? From the computer science side of things, you have your gameplay programmers, you have your physics programmers, you have your rendering programmers. So, I mean, I think to say that software development versus computer science, it really just comes down to what you're interested in, what the curriculum offers. Like I said, the traditional way will work. I think it just comes down to being able to visualize and materialize your passion into something that you can show. And I think also part of it is just, it's that catch-22. How do you get a job when you don't have the experience, and how do you get the experience if you don't have a job? And I think, again, nowadays, there's with Apple developer kits, $99, and you can go make your own iPad app or iPhone app. There's lots of tools out there that'll let you, kind of your own game kits. The Unreal Engine is free, right? There's Unity out there as another competing engine, and they all offer a chance and a lot of good documentation for you just to kind of get started. So I don't think there's one right answer here. I think it's just, if you can find a formal class that you can relate to and want to participate in that, that's great. If you find some set of, mod toolkit that for some game you're really passionate about and you want to share your maps and game ideas out that way. If there's things called game jams where they just spend 48 hours or a weekend, what can you make in 48 hours? And they're really tough because it's a combination of limiting the scope of your project. What can you complete in 48 hours? You're not going to make an MMO like World of Warcraft in 48 hours. Try something small. Just make a game what could I do if I hooked up my microphone to the screen and I just, a character starts running across the screen. Every time I make a noise, the character jumps. Just figure out a game mechanic and play with it, right? Just prototype. I think there's a lot of mileage that can come from those things.
One more from the chat for you.
Sure.
New styles of media partnerships, for example, in-game Star Wars trailers, upcoming Tenet film to be shown in-game, are being pioneered by Fortnite. Are there any interesting stories or technical details related to new media partnerships?
And it's a great question. I don't know how far I can go into those. I can't obviously reveal any secrets or things like that. I think it's been really cool I think it's the game industry's, our attempt at least to, again, as Tim Sweeney has been saying online, this metaverse, right? How do we get people's content to be shared, right? We typically right now, the assembly line is, we come up with an idea, we make some content, we expose it to everyone. But much, not far different from what I was just saying about editors. If we can put the power of the content in the gamer's hands or in another company's hands, and then we don't have to be the curators of it, minus, censorship or any kind of inappropriate content, wouldn't it be great if you could make a thing at your desk, push a button, and the next thing is it's online. And so the Unreal Engine, for example, is going a long way to that, which is, can we show the Star Wars trailer in the game? Can we, the Tenet trailer, which was just last night? There's a lot of technology in the online domain about how do you connect this stuff up? How do you ship a laptop to someone, especially in this, this virus moment, and just connect them up to our server so that they can DJ. We had the Party Royale event a couple of weeks ago, and we had 3 DJs get online for an hour and just, showcase their music. So I think it's just about the tools and the software that empowers creators to be creative in the online space, or in the, in the digital electronic space, whatever you want to call it. And now, as far as media partnerships, I think everyone else just like Sony did this with PlayStation Home. So way back in like 2007, 2008, there was this kind of just this experience. Second Life is another company or another game that was just like, what if we just let people showcase their wares, like bring Adidas or Reebok or you know, some movie company in. I think we're really fortunate that Fortnite's popular. There's a lot of eyeballs looking at this game right now. And so I think, you know, you have Nike or the NFL or the NBA, you know, they just like, how do we explore getting our format in front of potential customers or viewers, you know.
And keeps things fresh.
Yeah.
Josh, thanks so much.
Yeah, not a problem. I hope
Appreciate
that was
you being
helpful. Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to help people out, like, you know, in the industry. I hope it gets easier, not harder as time goes on. But again, I think a lot of it just comes down to what kind of effort you want to put in and your passion. So thank you.
Big round of applause, everybody, for Josh Markowitz, Epic Games. Josh, thanks so much. All right. So everybody, hope you enjoyed that. Sorry we couldn't get to all your questions, but we want to keep the adult night party rocking and rolling. Our next guest, we're going to switch from video games to tabletop games to board games. Our next guest is Elizabeth Hargrave, the award-winning designer of games Wingspan, Tussie Mussy, and the soon-to-be-released, I think just later this summer, Mariposas. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. I'm looking for you. I have to...
Oh. Hello.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you? Thanks for being... How are things?
All right. Doing well.
Good, good. So I didn't quite make it all the way through your bio here, and why specifically a natural history museum would want you, particularly as a board game designer, because Wingspan is probably the most ecologically accurate board game on the market. Is that right?
That might be fair, yeah. Or most detailed, certainly.
Well, I can tell you, a few of us at the museum after work sat around and played a few rounds of Wingspan, and we were blown away. Like, no one at that table in particular were bird experts, but the level of detail, the illustrations, the way the game works with the habitats and the food, oh, you know, a bunch of natural history nerds, we were pretty happy.
I'm glad you had fun with it, yeah.
And I understand that that whole theme comes from your own interest in nature and natural history.
Definitely, yeah, and sort of a dissatisfaction with the board games that I was playing when I started working on Wingspan were much more sort of traditional. What we called the hobby board game market is a lot of sort of games about medieval Europe and spaceships and trains. And not a lot about the natural world. So it was really a reaction to the themes of a lot of the games that were out there at the time.
So it looks like actually there's a lot of people in the chat here who played Wingspan, and they're talking about how much they enjoy it. For those maybe who haven't, could you give us a quick rundown of the game, what it is?
Sure. I mean, Chris just gave a little taste of it. So it's a game that has 170 unique different bird cards, and your goal is to sort of play birds out in front of you into different habitats. And you take the core actions of the game when you activate one of the habitats. So you would go to your forest to get food to then build more birds, or you would go to the grassland to lay eggs, you go to the wetland to draw cards. And each turn you're basically going to one of those habitats, doing the base action of that habitat, but then you also get to activate the powers of any birds that you've already played into that row. So over the course of the game, you're building up this system where your turns just get more and more powerful as you go along. And it's all based on having more birds.
So did you know about the birds first? Like, did you have 170 birds in your brain first?
I didn't start with 170. I designed it with closer to 50, and got all the systems working. And then while it was under development with Stonemaier, we sort of agreed that it would be fun to have a much bigger deck, sort of inspired by terraforming Mars and the feeling of that game where like you're never going to see all the cards in the deck in one game, and it's this enormous feeling of discovery as you play your first many games that you're still seeing new cards that you haven't seen before. We thought that would be fun with the birds too.
Yeah, it was fun when I played it.
Yeah.
Looks like it was fun when the people here in the chat played it too. Well, so the reception for Wingspan was tremendous. You have a long list of awards and award nominations for Wingspan. How many other games have you designed before Wingspan?
Wingspan was my first.
Your first?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I worked on it for a really long time.
I think I read you spent 3 years
like
on
2013, 2014, and kept working on it on my own until I pitched it in August of 2016. So I found a publisher after I had already been working on it for a couple of years. And then we spent another year still developing it before we sent it off to the printers. And then it was started working on the art and everything. And then it was another year before it finally came out. So it was, overnight success with many years of preparation.
The way I think most overnight success
right.
really goes, isn't it? And so tell me about the first few months, like when you finally got the idea, I should turn my birding hobby, nature enthusiasm, into board game. I mean, like you said, this isn't a game that anybody else had thought of. So that had to have been kind of exciting to start to work that idea into something tangible.
Yeah, and I just started with, a bunch of pieces of like index cards and writing out in pencil what I thought the different cards should do, and played it many times just against myself, playing two different hands until something seemed to be sort of working. And then I roped my spouse in, and then, eventually roped in friends, and eventually made it sort of out into the larger game design community and started going to playtesting events with other game designers. So there's sort of an expanding circle of getting more and better input and playing it more and more times. And you just have to, I think a lot of people don't realize how many times a board game gets played before it makes it to market. It takes a lot of iteration. Almost nothing ever like springs forth from the designer's head in final form.
So creating a board game, like going from pencil and paper to a published game on store shelves, it's a black box to me. Mm-hmm. Like, I love board games, sure, but the whole process that goes behind it, can you maybe shed a little bit of light on that? I mean, like how the industry works, how if you create something, you mentioned play testing. I guess that means a company like Stonemaier takes the game and works on it too?
So designers usually playtest well before they pitch to a publisher. So I think the analogy that a lot of people may be more familiar with is it's a lot like pitching a book to a book publisher. So you have a pretty fully fleshed out idea, or maybe your fully written novel or fully developed game before you ever show it to a publisher.
Gotcha.
And I mean, there are some exceptions. There are some publishers that have in-house designers, for example, but the vast majority of games that get published, designers are working on spec and then shopping it around to different publishers once they've put in a lot of work to get it pretty polished. Because there are so many people doing design, it's really hard to even get your game looked at by a publisher if you're a brand new designer. So you want something that's really far along in the process and really developed already, so that you can get their attention and show them something that they could really see being a successful product. And so because of that, there are a lot of local groups. Here in DC, we have a really great playtesting group that meets once a month, and then I've got other designers that I meet with actually weekly, and we just play each other's games. I know in North Carolina there's a group called the Game Designers of North Carolina that has regular playtesting meetings. I've been to one of their playtesting meetings last summer, which was great.
Exciting.
And I know a lot of those guys, because also there are larger regional conferences. So one of the first ones that I went to is held in Baltimore every year called Unpub. And you go there and it's hundreds of designers playing their games. The public is invited to come in and sort of get a chance to have input on these unpublished games that need varying degrees of work. Some of them are brand new, some of them are really just about ready to pitch or just about to go to Kickstarter even. But really, like, the only way to figure out what's working and to see all the different combinations of cards that are going to come out and to, you know, figure out the ins and outs of what works and what doesn't is to get people to sit around a table and play it. It's been rough right now transitioning to figuring out how to do all of that online.
How do you do it? I'm curious now.
Yeah, so there's a couple of programs. The one I think people are using the most is called Tabletop Simulator, which is a program that you can upload all of your cards. You can say, I need this many dice of these colors, whatever you want. And it sort of just can create those objects for you in a digital environment. And it doesn't know any of the rules of your game, which can be useful when you're playtesting because it means you can change the rules on the fly, just verbally. So usually you'll be chatting on some separate software. Like there's a group in New York City that was one of the first ones to sort of move to this model. They meet a couple times a week, and they've opened it up to people around the world to just come in and play test their games. So I've done that several times. So you're like using voice chat on Discord to talk about it as if you're sitting around a table, and then you're just like, you can use your mouse to move the items around on this digital table. And pretty much you can play any game if you can figure out how to get the objects uploaded into that software. So it's better than nothing. It takes longer to move things around than if you could just pick them up with your hands and move them. But it more or less works.
Making it work. Like an enormous natural history moving their 1,000-person after-hours party
right.
to Zoom.
You just got to figure it out, right? Because we're in this for a while still, I think.
We figure it out. Well, So we've talked a little bit about the game. What about getting outside in nature? Because I think that was the whole inspiration for creating Wingspan, and I think Mariposas too. Yeah. So I read that you had quite an experience that led to designing Mariposas.
Yeah, well, the whole story of the migration, so Mariposas is about monarch butterflies specifically and their migration. So they overwinter in central Mexico, and they will migrate as far as southern Canada over the summer. And then the population migrates back to Mexico for the next winter, but the butterflies that go back in the fall are the great-grandchildren. It's 4 generations, great-great-grandchildren of the butterflies that went north in the spring. So it's kind of this amazing process. No one really understands like how they know to do this because it's not the same butterflies that are making the round trip. And I, many years ago, went to one of the butterfly sanctuaries in Mexico. There's basically like 12 mountainsides that have the right climate for them. It's a very small region in the state of Michoacan in Mexico. And you can go and see it. And just imagine like the entire population of monarch butterflies for all of Eastern North America getting concentrated onto 12 mountainsides. They're just so dense there that I first walked in and saw these trees that looked like they had orange leaves, and then you get closer or they start moving and you realize that all of those things that you think are leaves were butterflies, and that the sun will come out and they'll just all take off and start flying at once in these enormous clouds. It's amazing. You can see videos of it online. There's a PBS program, I think it's Nature on PBS, has been putting out a series of videos where they've sent drones in that are sort of camouflaged to look like animals, and they have some amazing footage of one of the butterfly sanctuaries in Mexico that you can find online. It's and their footage is what it was like to be there in person. It was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen.
Do you have favorite birding spots?
I do. I mean, I have a few that are sort of my local spots that we've been going to a lot during the migration season. Things are starting to slow down here, but the last few weeks we've been going out a lot very early in the morning to catch all the warblers that are passing through, that are only, you know, coming through for a few days at a time, each species on their way from, you know, and they spend the summer further north than here. So there's a couple of spots especially that are like wetland areas, so you get all the water birds, you get the warblers in the woods, and yeah, I definitely have spots. My husband is a very competitive e-birder. There's a citizen science project called eBird, where you can, if you bring it up on your phone while you're out birding, you can keep track of all the birds that you see. And then it does all this fun sort of gamifying of it, of, you know, you can see your life list, you can see your life list for a specific location. And then they have ranked lists of who has reported the most species for different places. And so my husband's like jockeying for position with other people at Lake Artemisia near us.
So a competitive birder and a birder who builds competitive games.
Right.
There you go. Well, let's see. I'm going to look over here in the chat and grab some questions for you. Marshall, same question you have for Josh. What advice do you have for people that are interested in getting into tabletop game design?
Don't let an idea like stew in your head, because you will waste a lot of time thinking about it that you could save yourself if you just make a quickie handmade prototype and try your game, because I guarantee there will be something about how it works when you actually get it on the table that you did not think about when you were thinking about it in your head. And so, yeah, I meet people who have like these notebooks full of notes about this board game that they're going to make, and I'm like, half of the stuff in your notebook will be unusable. You just have to make the actual game. So I think that's my biggest advice. I think, you know, getting out to events and meeting people is hugely valuable. Meeting other designers and playtesting with other designers, I think, is much more valuable than playtesting just with your friends. First of all, you'll burn out your friends, and other designers, you can have sort of a quid pro quo where you're playtesting their stuff and they'll playtest your stuff. But they're just thinking about the way games work differently, and will have more ideas about how, like, if something's not working, why is it not working, and how could you fix it? And your friends will generally not have that insight unless they just happen to be thinking about games in that way, even though they're not designing games.
Gotcha.
And your friends are often scared of giving you honest feedback.
Right.
Or feel bad giving you honest feedback. So playtesting with designers who understand how important honest feedback is can also be super helpful.
So let's see. Anthony says, congrats on winning Kerner Spiel.
Thank you. It's pretty amazing.
So I have a question about that, because I was looking, and there are different prizes that have the de Jars, Spiel de Jars, Kerner Spiel de Jars. What's the difference between them?
So there's kind of there are three different prizes, and de Jars is just of the year in German, right? So there's
Gotcha.
Spiel de Jars is sort of their category for games that if you wanted to like buy a game for your family for Christmas. Apparently this happens a lot in Germany, and this organization is really focused on like advising German families on what game they should buy. Like, what's the best, if they're just going to buy one for Christmas, what's the one game that was the best that year? So the Spiel des Jahres is the original award, and it's like, if you're going to buy one for your family, this is the one. They have, since they started in like the 70s, eventually ended up splitting off two different awards from that. So they created the Kinderspiel, right? Kinder, like kindergarten, is children's games. And then the Kennerspiel gets translated as like expert game of the year, which creates a lot of controversy in the United States because people think of expert games as like really crunchy, like games that you play after you've been a gamer for a long time and you want to spend 3 hours playing it. And the games that end up winning the Counterspiel tend to really be, the way the folks on the committee described it to me is like, this is the game we're going to recommend for the family that's like ready just for the next step. So not necessarily that they feel like experts, but that the Spiel des Jahres, they're ready for a little bit more meat than the stuff that wins the Spiel. So that's my understanding of the 3 different awards.
Excellent. I mean, I'm glad you won it.
Thank you.
Let's see. Cameron's asking any expansions coming out for Wingspan soon. Jennifer chimed in. There's a European expansion that's out.
Yes.
And Oceania is coming soon. That's
exactly right. But hopefully by the end of the year. The timing's not entirely clear yet, and who knows what will happen with production and shipping for the rest of this year. But the goal is to get Oceania out by the end of the year. My work on it is done. The art is done. It's sort of in the proofreading process right now. And then it'll get sent to the printer. And then it takes months between the time that you send it to the printer. It takes them a good chunk of time to make a lot of games. And then it spends months on a boat because the manufacturers are all in China, and then it has to clear customs. So even after all of the work of the designer and the publisher is pretty much done, there's still quite a lag before something hits the market.
Let's see. Shiro was asking about Mariposas. We talked about that and how development went for that one. Does it have a similar feel to Wingspan? Or will it?
It's quite different. There's a map of Eastern North America, and you're moving little butterfly meeples around on a map. So it's quite different. A lot more about sort of movement and collecting sets of flowers as you move around the map. And you play it sort of over 3 seasons, and each season has a different goal that changes from game to game. But in general, you're like moving your butterflies north in the beginning of the game because it's spring, and then the goals sort of incentivize you to multiply your butterflies and spread them out over the summer, and then it's sort of a race back to Mexico in the fall. And that one should be out in August. That's the plan.
There you go, everybody. Put it on your wish list. Matt's asking which gaming conventions you've enjoyed the most and which you feel are the best for meeting publishers and other designers.
That's a really good question. Here in the States, Gen Con is the biggest. It is not necessarily the best for meeting people because as the biggest, the publishers are just like all out every day, all day, and they're exhausted. I've heard a lot of them say that Origins is very good because it's for meeting and pitching to publishers because it's a little smaller, but it's still big enough that a lot of publishers go. I just went to BGG Con last fall for the first time. That was a lovely size. Like, I am not a big fan of being in the huge crowds, and BGG Con is a much smaller con, but there's still like some publishers there that you can, and you have a much better chance of, when you're in the vendor hall, being able to just like stand and chat with fairly senior people from the different publishing companies because it's not super crowded. So there's a trade-off between like the biggest conventions are going to have everyone there, but it's harder to get their attention. And as you get smaller, you'll have fewer publishers, but much more access to the ones that are there. And usually for a given con, you can find the list of who's sort of coming to the exhibitor hall, and that's generally the list of the publishers that'll be there.
Excellent. Let me see here. How can the public get involved as or to become a playtester? I guess, can anybody go to a playtesting gathering like Board Gamers of North Carolina and hang out?
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think the Game Designers of North Carolina is open to the public. Maybe someone from that group is on here and can answer in the chat. But the meeting I went to is in a game store, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but I'm sure you can find their website and find out where they meet. A lot of playtesting groups are on Meetup. So like the one that operates in DC, they keep track of all of their meetings on Meetup, and also have a website that sort of refers you to the Meetup invites. Right now, if you want to get involved in online playtesting, there is a website called Cardboard Edison that is sort of here's lots of resources for board game designers. And on the Cardboard Edison website, they have a list of playtesting groups in general. And at the top of that one right now is a list of the virtual playtesting groups that are going on. And there is one every day of the week, I think. Maybe not Mondays, but every other day of the week. It's pretty cool that you can, and those, generally the general public is very welcome at playtests, especially if they have some experience with board games, because if all of the designers are trying to get their games played, it's super helpful to have people other than other designers to play them, because it sort of creates a little bit more capacity to get all the games to the table. You will be very welcome.
I mean, it sounds like fun. Okay. Oh, there's so many questions. Do you think there is a good way of making people aware of the benefits of educational games? Would you say your game, Wingspan, is educational, or does it fit into some of the category and you happen to learn some things too?
So,
or are those the same?
I think there's a category of education games that are like, memorize this trivia and regurgitate it as part of the game, and you win by remembering the stuff, right? And often the gameplay is not particularly interesting. It's just a format for remembering the facts that the game is trying to make you remember. I was trying to be sort of gameplay first, but to have the gameplay require you to interact with different things about the birds, like the food and the habitats, so that at least some of that you might pick up along the way. You're seeing all of these birds. There's a couple bonus cards that make you pay attention to the names of the birds. But there's nothing in the game that requires you to retain any of that information to do well at the game. It's definitely like a gameplay first, and you might learn some things, but I hope you do learn some things. And I'm certainly not offended if people call it an educational game, but I think the stereotype of educational game is not what is less gameplay focused than what Wingspan is. I don't think it has to be. I think as more people sort of realize that you can marry the two, I think there's a lot of potential to make better educational games and bring games into more classrooms. There's a lot of teachers that are very interested in using that to engage the kids they're teaching.
And museum staff.
Right.
Are you considering making games with other animals or insects?
Maybe. I mean, I keep saying I want to do a mushroom game. If I say it enough, maybe it'll make me do
a foraging game? Don't pick the red ones.
Yeah, right. I'm involved with the local mushroom club here, so there could be fun stuff. I mean, I think there's so many interesting things going on in sort of one of the things that inspired Wingspan in the beginning was thinking about, like, there's a lot of economic dynamics that happen in board games that also happen in sort of natural systems that are untapped as board game mechanics. So that really interests me, and there is a good chance that I will keep exploring that space, but I don't want to commit that that's going to be like all of my games ever. I also, before the pandemic, had started working on a game about stunt people. So
stunt people.
But it's a dexterity game that involves flicking things around, and that is really hard to test online. So that's sort of on the shelf for now.
Gotcha. So let me see here. Let me look at other questions. Now, the artwork in Wingspan I want to talk about because it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
Can you at least shout out the artists, the illustrators?
Yes. So the board that you place your birds onto and the card backs are by Beth Sobel, who is an artist in the Pacific Northwest who does a lot of board game art. If you look her up, there's a database called Board Game Geek where you can look people up, and if you look up the games she has worked on, they're all beautiful. She is great. And then the two different artists worked on the birds because it was such a huge body of art that needed to get done. So that helped speed it up, and it still took them months to do all the birds in the base game.
Oh, wow.
And their names are Natalia Rojas and Ana Jaramillo. And if you go to Natalia Rojas's website, you can see beautiful, they've scanned in all of the bird art as standalone art. You can order prints, but it's also just a great way to browse the bird art from the game.
So that means that you designed it, and then it was illustrated by two other women designers, artists, illustrators.
Yep.
So, and I caught your question for Josh too earlier about incorporating diversity into gaming, and I've seen where you've done other interviews and written and tweeted about making gaming and tabletop gaming more diverse. So, what have been the changes that you've seen?
I mean, just in terms of my personal experience, when I started going to playtesting events 5 years ago, I was very often the only woman in the room. For something as large as Unpub, it was like 5 or 10% women. It has gotten better. There are definitely other women in the DC area that are designing games now. Unpub every year has a few more women. It is still far from 50-50. And one of the things that I've thought about a lot over the last year is I keep getting messages from guys who are like, "Oh my God, you've designed like the only board game that my wife actually asks to play." Like, I've been I actually did a presentation that's, I think, linked on my website last fall about sort of are there things about Wingspan that reflect the fact that it was designed by a woman that were like totally unintentional that might be causing that. Like, if you look at some data about like the things that board gamers are looking for, women are much less interested in high conflict games, for example, and Wingspan is like a super low conflict, nicey, like a lot of the interaction is giving other people things and you're never actually taking things away from people. So there are little things like that, and even sort of the art style and other things that I suspect sort of code it as more welcoming to women than like the cover of Gloomhaven, which is all dark and scary looking. Which is not to say that women don't play all kinds of games, but on average, if you look at the data about what women say about like what are their core reasons for playing games, it's more about the social engagement and less about like proving yourself in conflict. So it's just something I've been thinking about in terms of like, because if you go to board game conventions, it's also not 50-50, it's getting closer, but it is certainly more men than women, even as gamers. And if we're gonna pull game designers from the pool of people who play games, we need to make sure that we're putting out a wide range of games that appeal to all different kinds of people, so that all different kinds of people get engaged in the hobby and then go on to become game designers and then are designing more diverse games that bring more people into the hobby.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing. And everybody, check out the chat. We dropped links to a whole bunch of stuff in there. Playtesting groups all over the place, resources, artists,
Oh, great! You got Natalia there.
Yeah, we're. This is so great, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being a part of the event tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And everybody, we're gonna switch over now. I hope that you had time to get the AudioKit Synth One app downloaded if you have an iOS device. Of course, if you don't, follow along with us. We're going to be making some fun, original style video game sounds. So let me bring to the program electronic music composer, Senator Jez, aka Eben Crawford. Eben, welcome.
How you doing, Chris?
There he is.
Yeah, we're about to go on a trip through time.
I'm so ready.
Yes.
I couldn't be more ready.
It's interesting that we started with talking about Fortnite on this event, as video game sounds and music have come a long way. Scoring a video game now is much akin to scoring a movie. They have the biggest names in the industry working in it. And the soundtracks for video games are very popular, but it wasn't always like that. So we're going to go back to 1977, they had a device called the Atari video game console. This is even before the 2600. And that was in 1977, and that carried an 8-bit Motorola CPU. It was a chip called the Stella. And that chip was required for the video, for the image, and for the sound. And you could only control 3 parameters in sound. That was the type of sound, the frequency, and volume. There was no such thing as an actual note. So on that device, music was used very loosely. But then about the mid-'80s, Nintendo came around with the NES. That gave a whole 5 channels on its chip. And now 5 channels was dangerous. You had 3 waveforms, you had a noise generator, and you had a sampler. That was if you had sounds like a voice in the game or something. But back then, the cartridges that they came on could only carry 6 megabytes. So it was still very limited. But that is the classic 8-bit sound that we're going to talk about today, that most people think of when they think of classic video games. And it's even spawned a whole genre of music called chiptune, and there's still people today that compose only in 8-bit sounds. But what we're going to do today is we're going to emulate an 8-bit sound.
I'm going to throw a quick question your way.
Yes.
Because you, in addition to being composing your own music and releasing your own albums and tracks, you also compose music for us. You're the in-house musician composer for the Museum of Natural Sciences, which I don't know of any other museum that has their own musician composer who makes stuff for us.
We are very rare. We have a full production crew. We have everything from videographers to editors to animators to music. And we have a TV studio in the museum. We have a radio studio in the museum. So yeah, we're pretty set up. We are very rare, and especially since we're a natural science museum. I mean, maybe that would make more sense in an art museum, but no, we just take things to the next level all the time.
Next level all the time. All right. Have you ever done video game music for the museum?
I have simulated video game music for the museum, but we haven't actually produced any video games yet, though. But you know,
True.
Never say never, because we're always looking for that next rung to step up to.
All right. Well, Senator, I am ready. I've got my Synth One app ready, my little keyboard.
All right. Let me just share this screen here, and we'll get started. All right. Now, I do want to say, if you're following along on an iPhone and not an iPad, if you look at the buttons right above the keyboard, the second button from the left, it should say show. If it says hide, go ahead and press that until it says show, because on the iPhone, you do need to have the keyboard minimized. Now, I also, since I'm sharing this screen, I don't have a cursor or something that you can see. So whenever I talk about something, I'll go ahead and just wiggle something. Now, this Synth One synthesizer here is a beast. This is a very powerful synthesizer. So what we're doing is we're basically dumbing this down for this sound because we're going to try to emulate an 8-bit tone. Now, the first thing we want to do is in the information screen on the information area on top, we want to open that up and we want to search for user. And in user, you'll find a patch called init. And you want to go ahead and click that, and then go ahead and click the information area again to get back to the programming part of the synthesizer. And I do have a copy of this up right now. So the sound that we're going for today will be, so that's the sound that we're going to try to make today. And then after that, we'll go ahead and learn the first 9 notes to the Imperial March from Empire Strikes Back.
Nice.
So the first thing we want to do is we want to find OSC1. Now that's in the top left. This is up here. As you can see, I'm moving this around, and that's a slider. These are the waves that we're going to work with. A synthesizer at its basic form is a tool that generates a tone and then manipulates that tone through several stages to make different tones. It's kind of simplistic, but that's basically what a synthesizer is. There's all kinds of synthesis, but we're going to stick to this today. We're going to manipulate a tone. So if you look down, there's a spot right here I'm wiggling, and that says mix. Since we're really going for the basic 8-bit type tone, we're only going to use one of the main oscillators. So we want to turn that all the way down to 0. So we're only using the one oscillator. Now, that is a triangle tone. That's a triangle wave. This is a large square. This is a short square. And this is a sawtooth. What we're going to do is we're going to put this somewhere between, right here, between the sawtooth and the small square, and we'll get a tone that sounds like this. So it's kind of a basic tone. You could say it's kind of lo-fi as it is, but we're going to go ahead and manipulate that. We're going to go over to the part that says filter next. And is everybody still up with me? If anybody's not, hit us in the chat.
Yeah, let us know, folks, in the chat. Aben, I'll update you.
All right, cool. We're going to go to the filter section now. A filter is a fancy way of saying a type of EQ. The equalizers that most people are familiar with have bands, low bands to high, and you can accentuate or cut certain frequencies in the equalizer. A filter works differently in that it sweeps. It cuts out whole chunks of the frequency range. For what we're using today, we want it to be in low pass mode. It should be in low pass mode once we got to the init. Now, to let you see what a filter does, so you can see that it shapes the sound a little bit. For what we're going to do today, we're going to go for the filter to be about right there. Now, resonance, that accentuates the cutoff frequency of the EQ, of the filter, which basically means the spot where the filter is sitting, it accentuates, it adds volume to that spot. So we're going to go ahead and put the resonance about right there. So you can see we have a pretty lo-fi sound right now as it is. Right next to that, you'll see a button that says mono. The thing about old chiptune is they were monophonic, meaning one note at a time, not multiple notes. So we're going to go ahead and click that mono button so that we can't have more than one note playing at a time. Now let's cruise back over to the OSC1. So this is where we're at with the sound. I'm going to mess with this knob right here. This is the semitones knob. So we're going to bring that. We'll be going about right there. And a cool thing about this synthesizer is you can see how you're altering the waveform right in the center in that little screen there. So we need to get a little bit of character to this. It's good where it's at, but we're going to go down to the frequency modulation. That's the FM section there. And what that does, in this it's simulated, but in a non-simulated synthesizer, what that does is it uses control voltage to affect an existing waveform. It basically means it's going to modify the waveform that we already have. And this is a digital oscillator that is built in. So we're right here at this volume knob in the FM section. And we're going to go ahead and add to about right there. And then the modulation, that is changes over a time to the waveform that we're creating. We're going to go ahead and move that mod, that's this button knob right here. And we're going to move that to about that area right there. And that gives us this sound. Now we're going to go just to the right. And this is the noise oscillator. And it's exactly what it says. This is going to give us white noise, which we're going to add into our sound. So we don't want a lot. We just want it to crisp up the edge of the sound there. So that's a good spot for that. Now we only have really one more thing we're going to do on this part of the synth, and then we're going to move on to another part, and that is the sub. Because as you can hear, that's kind of high pitch. It doesn't have a lot of weight to it. So we're going to come over here to the sub. That's this knob right over here, all the way to the left. And we're going to go almost all the way up with that. And if you notice, there's a radio button right next to it that looks like it has a square wave. And we're going to go ahead and click this to turn it on. And the reason is the sub is a sine wave. It's a very, very even pure wave. We want this to be a little rough. We want it to, we're going to take a little bit more of the fidelity out of this. And this is what we have by going through the sub. So that gives it, that fills it in. What it's basically doing is giving us a sub note that's 12 tones underneath where the main oscillator is. So it's putting in bass notes. So if everybody is caught up to where we are right now, we're going to move on to the next section of programming our sound. Does that sound cool?
Let's do it.
All right.
There was a dog that wasn't a fan of that tone.
You know, I can understand that because there's whenever you hear a tone, there's a lot of other tones mixed into it, the harmonics, and that probably has some dog whistle harmonics in it. It's so I can get that. We're going to look at the right-hand side of the control panel here, and you'll see an arrow that says ENV. Go ahead and click that, and we are going to be using the amplitude envelope. Very quickly, what an envelope is another fancy way of saying it's an automation device. And by automation, I mean that it makes changes automatically that affect the sound that we're creating. In this particular envelope, we are going to use what's called the Adsr, and that's attack, decay, sustain, and release. So I'm going to put everything down to 0 here. And as you can see, here's the attack. Actually, I'm going to put the decay up just a little bit because we're going to need that to hear what we're doing. So the attack is how long it takes for a tone to come to its full volume. So if you have a very low attack, it's instant. However, you can put that attack out there, and as you can see, it kind of ramps up. For a chiptune, for an 8-bit sound, we want that attack completely down. Decay is how long it takes for the attack to trail off. So for this, let's go ahead and give this, just about right there. Sustain is important. Sustain is important in that that's how long the tone sounds while it's being triggered. So for sustain, we're going to go ahead and give that a little bit of growth there. Now that's really the only 3 parts of this envelope we're going to use, and we're at this point in the sound. release is cool. And if you ever programming your own synth, what release does is it basically is the tail of the sound. So if we put the release out here, as you can see, it takes a longer time to trail off. We want absolutely no release because we want it to be very immediate. All right, so we're actually done with this control panel now, and we can move on to the next. And we have to make 2 jumps for this. If you look at the right-hand side again, you'll see one that says pad. Go ahead and hit that, and then you'll see that pad turns to FX. So go ahead and hit the FX button. Now, this is where we finish our sound, and we're going to have some fun with it. So we're going to start right here. As you can see, I'm clicking this button. We're going to add some reverb to this, and this is just simulating space. Reverb is what you hear at a concert. It's when sound bounces off of walls. It's the echo. So not really the echo. I'm sorry. That's actually delaying, which we're going to get to next. So as you can see, where we're at with the reverb right there gives us a lot of space. We don't really want a lot of space in this. What we want to do is just simulate what you would hear from a small speaker from your console or from your TV back in the 80s. So we're going to take the size, which is where I'm right here. Size is the amount, or should I say, they call it size because it'd be the size of the room that's creating the bounce, the waves. So we're going to go pretty low with this. Low cut, we're going to not touch it, and the mix, we're going to leave it at half. And now we're going to trigger the delay. This is actually a really fun. We're going to leave the time pretty much right in the center, and the feedback. Now time, that's how long it takes before the sound is repeated in an echo. Feedback is how many times the sound is repeated in an echo. So we're going to leave this pretty low. In the mix, we're going to leave the mix pretty low too, because we really just want a little tiny bit. It'll be almost, it's hard to perceive actually at this level, but this is where we have with reverb and delay with this programming. Actually, I think we can actually pull that down in the mix a little bit and actually pull the feedback down to almost 0. Let's see. That's a little better, I think. Okay, so now we're going to leave the phaser alone, and we're going to leave the auto pan as is, but we are going to set up some LFO modulators. LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. This controls the speed of the oscillator, and it gives you a variety of interesting effects over time. What we're going to do is we are going to highlight the cutoff of oscillator 1. So it's this right here. And that's on the first LFO. And on the second LFO, we are going to put on the oscillator 1, we're going to modulate the bit crush. We haven't got to the bit crush yet. The bit crush is going to be the cherry on top of all of this. So we also want to change the waveform. So just tap this sawtooth. It's kind of a modified sawtooth triangle. Just tap that. See right there and right there. And that'll give us the parameters. So now on that first one, the rate is how we're going to affect the oscillator time-wise. So we're going to put that just about there. As you can see, right here is where I'm at. Not a whole lot. And amount, we're going to just tap the amount. Just tap the amount. We don't want a lot of oscillation here. And for LFO2, where we're working with the bit crush, we want to give just a tiny bit of rate and a tiny amount, not much at all. Or you know what? Let's be adventurous. Let's be adventurous. On the amount on this one, let's go ahead and pull that one up. And let's pull the amount of this one up, and let's go this way. We'll be able to hear a bigger difference. And this is the fun part, the bit rate crusher. This is actually going to make this more of a lo-fi tone, which is getting us where we need to be. And I think that works right about there. So now this is a very simplistic tone we've done. This is nowhere near using the the full power of this synthesizer, but we have now programmed our chiptune, our 8-bit sound. And so I promised the first 9 notes of The Empire Strikes Back, the Imperial March. I don't want to give much more than that because I fear Disney more than I fear anything else just about Disney. Don't want them coming after us, in other words. So you only need 3 notes to play the first 9 notes of the Imperial March, and that's G, D sharp, and A sharp. And what you get is this. It helps if I start on the right note. But yep, that is the first 9 notes to the beginning of the Imperial March using our newly created chiptune sound.
Woo. Hey, everybody, did you get it? Did you get it? Is everybody going to go write their own 8-bit musicals now?
The link that we sent out with this synthesizer, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there are a lot of resources there. If you want to learn more about this and take it deeper, there's a lot of stuff there that can teach you.
All right. Okay. Somebody wanted you to do, give us those 3 notes. Give us Vader one more time.
Okay. Let me actually pull this back up here.
I want to make sure everybody got it. And then we're going to play.
It's a little tough to actually play because there's a lag from what you were seeing and hearing and from what I'm playing over here. So if it sounded like it's lag is hard to play over, but this is what it is. So you want to hit G 3 times. And then you want to go to D sharp, to A sharp, back to G. So it's then do this again.
And then you just drop a beat on it and you've got the best house party.
Drop a beat and 6ix9ine's out of prison now, so get him to rap over it.
Aben, thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Walking us through using a synthesizer, what the technology is like, and teaching us a song, and we made video game sounds. It was perfect.
We aim to please here at the Museum of Natural Sciences.
That's what we do.
Yes.
All right. So everybody, we're going to drop links in the chat to Aben's website, senatorjez.rocks, as well as Spotify, where you can find the Senator's music.
Thank you very much.
One more time. Thanks so much.
You bet, man.
Okay, everybody. You stuck it through. You ready for our last segment? Because it's time to play some trivia. That's right. Now, the prizes for trivia are free tickets when the museum reopens to the museum, which is a free museum. So we're playing for bragging rights is what that means. But let's see how you do. Are you ready for a little game night trivia? Here's your first question. Now, you're going to see the Bairds, they're on this. We're going to be playing trivia using the polling feature within Zoom. So the polls will pop up on your screen when I launch them. We'll ask the question, give you a few seconds to submit your answer. When it looks like most of the answers have come in, we'll show you the results, and you will know whether you got it right or not, and we'll see what percentage of our viewers got the correct answer. Sound good? Ready to play? Let's go. Question number 1. In 2017, Hasbro introduced 3 new game pieces to the standard edition of Monopoly. They were the baseball cleat, hashtag, and poop emoji, the cell phone, electric guitar, and shark, the laptop, motorcycle, and Statue of Liberty, or a penguin, rubber duck, and T-Rex. Get those answers in. Few seconds left. All right, 5 seconds. Everybody got their answers in? Time. All right, let's see what you said. The top answer was a cell phone, electric guitar, and shark. That is incorrect. 13 people got it right. 27% said the penguin, rubber duck, and the T-Rex. That happens to be the correct answer. Here are your new Monopoly pieces right there. Penguin, T-Rex, rubber duck. Good job, everybody. All right. Ready for your next question? Question number 2. Here it is. Okay. Released in 1972, what was the very first video game console? Was it the Atari, the Intellivision, the Magnavox Odyssey, or the Nintendo Entertainment System? All right, half of the votes are in. Three-quarters of the votes are in. Anybody know this one just outright? All right, and M says it's got to be the Atari. Atari is a very, very good guess, but by just a few months, the Magnavox Odyssey is the correct answer. The Magnavox Odyssey. Question number 3. What is the highest scoring word ever recorded on a single Scrabble word in tournament play? Bauxite, Kazix, Quizify, or Squeezy? Which one is it? I'm trying to think if I even know what the definitions of any of these words are. Maybe I could guess at Quizify and Squeezy. 10 seconds. Get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Poll's over. Let's see if you got the correct answer. Well, some of you did. The correct answer is Kazix. Kazix is the correct answer. And Kazix for 392 points, in fact, which happens to also be the plural of a type of oriole, type of bird. There you go. Ready for another one? Most of you are getting most of them right so far. Question 4. On average, how many hours a week does a Fortnite player spend playing the game? 2 to 4, 6 to 10, 12 to 14, or 16 to 20 hours? Lots of folks went straight for the 16 to 24 hours. Oh, on the Scrabble question, Stephanie, good point. There's only one Z tile. So Quizify would have to be a blank, so no points. Okay. Matthew wants to know where's the 50 to 70 hours a week option. Oh, Deborah, your teacher, you say 2023. They spend 1 hour paying attention in class and then they go play Fortnite. All right, poll's over. Let's see what everybody said. Top answer was 12 to 14 hours. The correct answer may shock you, 6 to 10. 6 to 10 hours a week on average. Does that surprise you? Let's do another. Question 5. I got a feeling this crowd's going to know this one. What is the name of the final track in Mario Kart 64? Bowser's Castle, Cloudtop Cruise, Moo Moo Farm, or Rainbow Road? Stephanie, I self-reported Fortnite hours. You think people would not admit to playing more than 10 hours a week? Final track in Mario Kart 64. Just a couple seconds left, and poll's over. Time is up. Here's your results. Oh, lots of people said Bowser's Castle, but the most folks got it right this time. Rainbow Road is the correct answer. Final track in Mario Kart 64. For how many people did it take 15 years to beat it? Just me? Okay. Next question. We're going to stick with the Mario theme for this one. Mario originated as a character in which classic arcade game? Dig Dug, Donkey Kong, Excite Bike, or Missile Command? Bob says we're talking about his generation. You know, I think I can end this poll earlier. It looks like all the answers came in. 96% of you said Donkey Kong. And yeah, that's the correct answer. Bunch of smart people in here. All right. Want to do another one? I got lots of questions. Here you go. Let's see if you know this one. What is the highest grossing globally movie based off of a video game? Pokemon Detective Pikachu, Resident Evil, Super Mario Brothers, or Tomb Raider? What is the highest grossing movie based off of a video game? Few votes left to come in. All right. Looks like everybody's got their votes in. Ooh, this one was close. There's your answer. Correct answer is Pokemon Detective Pikachu. 19 people got it right. $433 million worldwide. 2019. Pokemon Detective Pikachu. That one, good thing we're not keeping score. That one threw some people. If this were trivia night on Tuesdays when we use Kahoot and keep track of the points, ooh, that one would have flipped the leaderboard. All right, next question. Let's do some more. Question 8. What popular computer game franchise was heavily influenced by Maslow's pyramid, aka Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Think back to your Psychology 101 class. Was it Animal Crossing, Civilization, Fallout, or The Sims? Get your votes in, just a few seconds left. Wait, Alan, you were in the Mario Brothers movie? Is this for real? Did you play Mario? Time's up on this question. Here's your results. Take a look. What did you say? Almost everybody said The Sims, and yeah, that's the correct answer. Nice job. Nice job. Very proud. Question 9. What is the name of the first playable female character in the Street Fighter franchise? Cammy White, Chun-Li, Elena, or Sakura? Ooh, looks like the votes are in. Here's your results. Take a look. Yeah, most folks got it right. Excellent work. 28 folks. Chun-Li is the correct answer. Correct answer. All right. Last question for you. Last one of the night. And then we will say thank you, goodbye, and good night. Get ready. We're going to test your deep game knowledge with this one right here. What popular online role-playing game has been used by epidemiologists to create models to limit the spread of real-world diseases? Was it Asheron's Call, Fallout 76, Ultima Online, or World of Warcraft? What popular online role-playing game has been used by epidemiologists to create models to limit the spread of real-world diseases? Oh, the answers are jumping around on this one. All right, I'm going to give you 3 more seconds. Time is up. Let's see what you said. Ooh, majority of folks said World of Warcraft, and that is the correct answer. World of Warcraft, the corrupted blood incident, when an infection that was put into the game to sort of just make one of the bosses really hard, they missed this part where it could spread through non-playable characters, and then all of a sudden took over the game. The only way that the World of Warcraft folks were able to shut it down was a hard restart on the physical servers themselves. But there was actually papers, scientific research papers written about the outbreak. And you can even find today current articles where scientists are talking about it again, given the current circumstances that we are in. So exciting stuff right there. If you were affected by the corrupted blood incident in World of Warcraft, let me know about it, because it sounds like it was wild when I was reading about it. There were people who would act like medics to heal others. There were people who would tell other players where there were safe zones, where there weren't other infected players. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. So, excellent job. I didn't keep score, so I'm going to say everybody got an A+ on game night trivia. Thanks for sticking with us. I know that we went late, but I hope that you had fun. Hope you learned something new. Hearing from our guests, Josh, Elizabeth, and learning music from Abe and Crawford, Senator Jez, and playing trivia. So, yeah, Anthony, you got a free ticket when the Museum of Natural Sciences reopens. Just, stop by the front desk and tell them you want your ticket to general admission ticket now, general admission ticket to the Museum of Natural Sciences. And since everybody wins in this game, you can all stop by, when we reopen, when we're safe, when we're all good and healthy to do this, because we want to see you there. We want to see you at the museum. We want to see you back here again next time too. So keep an eye out on the museum's social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're at Natural Sciences. Check out naturalsciences.org to see when the next Adult Night event is going to be coming up. If you had fun here, next Tuesday night, we'll be playing virtual trivia. You can find the links to register for just a round of trivia next week. That's Virtual Trivia Tuesday, naturalsciences.org. The Science Cafe next Thursday night will be happening. We're going to be talking about light pollution with an expert. So, you know what? Check out the website, see what's going on, check out the calendar, because we've got a lot of amazing stuff going on. And if you get tired of sitting in front of your computer screen, we have do-it-yourself science activities, citizen science projects where you can go outside safely and collect real data on nature for scientists to use. So lots of great stuff happening and coming out of the museum all the time, always. I want to say thank you one more time to tonight's sponsor, Citrix. Thank you so very much. And again, to museum members, like our Catalyst members. If you want more information, again, naturalsciences.org is where you want to be. I'm Chris. One more thank you to Andrea, Laura Beth, Greg, who am I forgetting? Sam, Susan, and even more names that I'm forgetting right now, who are the people behind the scenes. You saw them in the chat, keeping it up for you, who put a lot of work and effort into making these events, whether they happen virtually or inside the museum, go on. So you saw my face, but there were a lot of people behind the scenes making this project happen. So I'm going to say goodnight, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.